We are down to the last four of Copa America 2019. And yes, while the games last weekend weren't so hot, there probably are some pretty good betting opportunities this week as we get set for the semi-finals. First off, joining me in the wee hour as well, it's actually getting bright there now in British Columbia, is Adam Chernoff. Adam, give me a quick reflection on last weekend. I know it was kind of a mixed bag for you betting-wise, but what were your general takeaways?
A lot of great and a lot of terrible, and perhaps the most terrible. I don't know if it was the wonder kid Wilkner Fariñez blowing the shot there against Argentina and leaving it wide open for Lo Celso, or if it was Carlos Queiroz finally losing his mind, putting out the most ridiculous lineup and failing to even show up against Chile, throwing away that one after a brilliant stage. But it was certainly an up and down weekend, to say the least. Paraguay and then Colombia-Chile with the under and the draw were able to sort of sacrifice what could have been a great weekend, but overall sort of a disappointing one.
Yeah, I think we all knew our Venezuela +1 pick I was on when I endorsed the pick. So generally, I'm going to keep my mouth shut from here on. But I think we would have got away with the push there, bar that goalkeeping error. Mark O'Hare, general thoughts, general takeaways from last weekend?
Yeah, I mean, the Copa America's got a lot of grief this weekend because of those 0-0 draws, which I think is slightly unfair. There were 7 goals chalked off because of VAR, which is madness, really. I guess for us, it was quite a frustrating quarter-final match. Brazil-Paraguay went kind of exactly to plan, really. Brazil should have won that game, but even so, Venezuela losing their 2 centre-halves before the game for injury and illness was a big, big blow for them. They started slowly, and as Adam says, the Fariñez clanger wasn't really in the script there. And then I thought Adam called the Colombia-Chile game pretty much spot on. Colombia didn't show up at all, made a very few strange selections as well. And then Uruguay were really frustrating against Peru, VAR, and then Citadel. So it's been a curious competition. We've got a semi-finalist in Peru who we talked about from the outset as potential outsiders. They failed to score in 3 of their 4 games at the competition. Colombia have gone home without conceding a goal in the tournament. But I guess if you're looking for positives, extra time is now into play from the semi-finals onwards, so less chance of teams playing out 0-0 draws and looking for penalties. And also we've got 2 semi-finals between 2 of South America's biggest rivals, Brazil and Argentina, and then Chile and Peru. Neither of those 2 teams like each other very much, so it should be very feisty affairs and hopefully some decent football too.
Yes, indeed. And let's start with Tuesday night's game from Belo Horizonte. This is otherwise known as the Super Clásico de las Americas. I definitely didn't pronounce that right. But let's start with the betting with Brazil at 1.9. That has kind of drifted. I was up about 1.8 yesterday. 5.0 Argentina. Like I said, obviously small bit of warm money for the Argentinians in the market. 3.52 is the draw. Argentina getting a half a goal start on the Asian handicap at 2.05, and the total is 2.25, and that is slightly favouring the under at 1.86. Mark O'Hare, I will stay here with you for this one. Brazil, two wins away from ending this 26-year drought. That actually made me feel old this morning when I was looking that up, Mark, 1984. What are your thoughts here with Brazil? Because, I mean, obviously they won big against Peru. Then we saw them kind of obviously struggle against Paraguay, especially in the final third. But then again, if you look on the other side with Brazil, that was probably a monkey off the back because Paraguay had beaten them in penalty shootouts previous to that.
Yeah, for sure. I think they're very fair favourites to win this. They're around 1.8 to win the competition outright. So you're going to get a bigger price than to beat Argentina in 90 minutes. So I think it's difficult to dismiss. I don't want to be a parrot repeating the same stuff over and over again, but this is a nation that's only lost 4 home games in their history. They've lost 1 competitive since 1975, and that was in this stadium, of course, in the World Cup semi-finals. So there might be a few ghosts to exercise in this game, but 2 defeats in 40 under Chiche, conceded 10 goals in over 60 hours, unbeaten in 14 since the World Cup, kept 12 clean sheets as well. Defensively, they've been, flawless really in this competition. Allowed just over 0.24 expected goals per game on average. Just the 10 shots from inside the penalty area conceded, 5 shots on target too. Casemiro's back, fit and available again from suspension. They've never lost when he's been on the pitch. At the other end of the pitch as well, things are going reasonably well. If you look at the stats, no team has generated a larger XG, more shots in the box, on target, possession, etc. They're streets ahead of all their rivals in this competition at the moment, based on the data itself. Now, it doesn't necessarily pass the eye test, but I just want to go back 12 months because it's easily forgotten because of one of those 2 defeats for Chiche came in the World Cup Belgium, they lost that game 2-1, despite absolutely dominating it. Easily forgotten that they did. They, created 3.55 XG, 25 shots, 9 shots on target, conceded an early own goal and a cracking De Bruyne strike. They really should have won that game. And I think Chichi's kind of overthought things a little bit too much since then. He's tried to add a bit more steel, a bit more balance to his midfield. They're nowhere near as adventurous as they probably once were. He's tried to pigeonhole Firmino into that centre-half spot, which hasn't really worked for 12 months. And I do think they do lack a bit of a sort of penalty area presence, really, because he's playing and he's dropping deep quite often. Now, the issue with Brazil is obviously scoring the first goal, which we've talked about many times. They haven't done it in a couple of games, and when they have, they've broken and cut loose, really. So getting that early goal is absolutely key. The key, really, for them, well, I guess for Argentina here, is Brazil's 4 opponents in the competition so far have all sat deep, tried to defend and tried to grind out a 0-0. Particularly that game in Paraguay on the pitch at Porto Alegre was very, very tough. Now, I'm wondering about how they're going to approach this game, because if they sit deep, I'm not sure they've got the tools or maximise the tools at their disposal to truly hurt this Brazil team. Because there's no doubt if Brazil do overcommit, Argentina have the firepower to hurt them. But for Argentina, I just can't see how Scaloni can come into this game playing the same system he's played in the last 2 games, where he's got Martinez and Aguero up top and Messi just behind, because you've got 3 players who want to play, as far forward as possible. 2 of those, in terms of Martinez and Aguero, work hard. Messi's had a very weird tournament. He didn't do anything in the last 2 games. Just lacking a bit of balance there, particularly defensively, where their mobility isn't great anyway. Their ability as well in defence is questionable. There's a bit of a lack of cohesion in midfield too. We've got no real specialist defensive midfielders. So I'm really intrigued to see how Scaloni approaches this game, whether he does stick with that same system, because it could easily be suicidal here. As I said, they handed a bit of a helping hand against Venezuela with the centre game. They were able to settle very quickly, get the early goal, and then play it into their hands, really. But I just think it's going to be very, very much against them if they do try and attack this Brazil team. It's going to play into Brazil's hands, and I think at the odds on offer, as I say, a shorter price to win the tournament than they are to win this match in 90 minutes. I think there's a fair play there. But also, I just think with the narrative, the media narrative, as well as, us as spectators watching on those quarterfinals with the 0-0s, I'd be keen to sort of look at the goals line here. I think you can get around over 2 goals at a 1.75-ish, possibly a bit bigger. I had a look back to semi-finals in the Copa America since 1993, which is 10 tournaments. 85% of those featured at least 2 goals. I guess by tradition, these games tend to open up. We've had about 55% of those games settled by 2 goals or more too. So if Argentina do come out to try and play, I wouldn't be too surprised if Brazil put them in their place.
Yeah, over 2.0 currently available at 1.79 a matchbook. Adam Chernoff, try to give me a counter argument here, because obviously we opposed Argentina in the quarterfinal against Venezuela, but I suppose we do have to give someone the credit. Like, there's a lot missing in certain areas, but man, they worked hard the last night, the Argentinians.
Well, the markets certainly loved them when the lineups came out last weekend, and I think the addition of DePaul and Acuna in midfield really made a big difference, and the market really responded to that. Right before the game, they got absolutely crushed. I mean, they were bet down to about 1.46, 1.47 at kickoff. So that was an enormous move in favor of Argentina just prior to kickoff. So it was really a true tell of what the lineup is. If they play DePaul, if they play Acuna, that's going to open up Paredes in midfield, who is not only very good in defense, but he was also very good at making that first pass out and connecting Aguero, Messi, and Martinez from the back line. So it was a very fluid movement there, and it looked like a very different team. The question I kind of have for you guys is regarding the narrative. I'm sort of isolated in my part of the world here, very attached into South America, where Argentina and specifically Scaloni are taking a beating, but which is why I was sort of surprised to see that market reaction. But is there sort of a presence that this team is still under their namesake and is performing? Is that why they're drawing attention, or what's really the driving factor over there in the media?
I mean, I think, Mark, you might be better placed to answer that one for sure. Definitely not me in this one.
Yeah, it's obviously the name, I think, of Argentina. People still fall in love with it. They've also got the best player on the planet, which helps as well. But I think most seasoned football fans over on these shores are well aware that Argentina are nowhere near the force they once were. So I think personally, it's probably a little bit to do with just the fact that Messi's in there. I think bookmakers are immediately wary of that. You could see in the top goal scorer start how short Lionel Messi was in that. Fact is, he hasn't performed for 2 games, if not this whole tournament. He's admitted himself he's not performed at all. So I think that's the thing for me with Argentina is there's potential there. There always is potential when you've got that guy in your team. There is potential for them to step up to the plate. But I think anyone who's been watching Argentina for 12 months, 18 months, 24 months on these shores is well aware that Argentina just aren't what they were maybe not even 10 years ago.
Adam,
yeah, no, that makes.
Yeah, sorry, Adam. I think you're kind of leaning on Brazil here, obviously, also.
I am, just because I think to some extent Scaloni, even though they looked like really formidable for lots of that Venezuela match, I still feel like he doesn't quite know what he has and he doesn't know how to control it. And the key for them is their best defense almost comes through their attack. And they were able to illustrate that for about the first quarter and then the last little bit of the match against Venezuela. But they were able to just find something in midfield. And Fourth played really well at defense. Their midfield was formidable. It sort of took the pressure off much of the back line, albeit Venezuela's not going to be nearly the attacking force that Brazil is. But I still feel like that back line is really vulnerable. And Scaloni really showed the hesitance I have around him when Martinez was having one of the best games we've seen from anyone on that team all tournament. He subbed him off early in the second half, brought in Di Maria. So he was basically like, we've got a 1-goal lead. Let's not play with 11 players. Let's play with 10 because Di Maria is not going to do anything for us. And he certainly did it. So he's like, let's bring him off. And then they also go and sub off Acuna, who, like I said before, playing with DePaul really opened Paredes. And they brought in Lo Celso, and people might point to, yeah, he got the goal. We all know how the goal was set up. But you look how high Lo Celso ended up playing in that match, and it really took away from their shape and form. So I have some questions now going up against Brazil. This is by far the biggest match he's coached in his career. Is he going to go forward and put forth a lineup like we saw last week that the market loved? Or is he going to regress to what he did in the opening couple matches where the market was well against Argentina and make another bad mistake? I'm not sure which Scaloni is going to show up, but I certainly don't have faith that he can go and manage against Brazil in a match of this stature. And really the big thing for me with Brazil is what looked concerning for them to me last match was they had Allen in midfield rather than Casemiro, who was out with the yellow card suspension. So Allen and Arthur kind of played on top of each other, and it gave Brazil like this weird sort of mashed up shape in the middle. And they sort of were conceding themselves to like, well, if Everton can do something really fast down the wing and take a great shot from outside the box and score, that's good enough for us. And even though they got 29 shot attempts off in that match, you never really felt like they had any sort of shape and structure in the attacking third. It was basically Paraguay throwing bodies across the pitch, trying to block anything they could, and they did a great job at that because that's what Paraguay does. But I just felt like Brazil didn't have that link between the back line and the attacking third that they've had in a couple of these matches. Casemiro's back for this match. He's definitely going to be in midfield. If he plays alongside Arthur, that gives them a much different look. And I just don't think that Argentina can hold off Brazil with their attack like they have in the last 2 matches against Qatar and Paraguay, which is a bit of maybe an overreaction that they beat both of those teams 2-0. Now they get a competent attacking team in Brazil who can sort of negate that our attack is our best defense mentality Argentina's taking. I haven't bet anything yet personally on this one, but I'm Brazil or nothing. And I'll just wait to see what comes out with the lineups a little bit closer to the match, but certainly lean Brazil here.
Brazil or nothing for Adam Chernoff. Like that. Okay, let's move on to Wednesday night. Let's move on to Chile and Peru at Porto Alegre. And let's take a look at the betting. Chile here at 1.97, 4.8 Peru. I don't know how Peru are still in this tournament. 3.28 is the draw. Peru getting half a goal start at 1.98 on the Asian handicap. Unsurprisingly, the total is a bit lower in this one, and it's 2 and it's slightly favouring the under. Adam Chernoff, I'll stay with you for this one. We were pretty hot on Colombia. I think you obviously predicted a draw there, bang on the money, but you also said that if there's going to be another result, it was going to be Colombia 1-0. But Chile, you could make the argument, probably outplayed them for much of that game.
Chile certainly outplayed them. I think it was the best match we saw at Chile all tournament. I'm still scratching my head, hung up my Colombia shirt in disgust after Carlos Queiroz decided to play probably his worst lineup. And in some sense, we saw a repeat of what they did against England, where all they had to do was just put forth a little bit of effort in midfield, and they probably could have controlled the match. They go, no, we're just going to defend and sort of run around with no purpose for 90 minutes and hope we get a result. When Chile puts forward 5 really untouchable penalties, it's very difficult to advance against that. So they certainly have practice in that regard. But I really liked what Chile was able to do around Pulgar in midfield. He was really able to sort of shut down any attack from Colombia that we saw. He really isolated Falcao to an extent, but also took out Martinez. I was a little unsure of what Chile was trying to do in the attacking third. They were crisp with their passes, but they were really, really selling out to the wings. And I thought that they had a little bit of room to run against Sanchez and Tecillo on the left-hand side for Colombia. And they were never really able to truly exploit that. Was a little disappointed in how Funzalida and Sanchez played in that match. But it really showed what Chile is. They like to get wide. They like to play very aggressively. They like to play very high. And if you think back to my Peru handicap and what their weakest at, they like to have Zambrano at center back, really cover for Avancula, who pushes very far up. He plays at right back for them. So I think that Chile can definitely have success getting wide on Peru, but it's an interesting spot here again, where we see the market really love Peru. And it's something we talked about a couple times in the previous videos. Dating back to the World Cup, every match that Peru has played, the market has gone ahead and backed them. And against Uruguay, they were backed late again as soon as the lineup came out. They had Carrillo and Flores in. I was really excited to see what Flores did. He was a huge flop in that match. Really, the whole attacking front for Peru, they just could never get forward against Uruguay and establish anything. The backline played really well to an extent. A couple overruled goals. Uruguay was sort of able to attack them on those wings where we sort of expected them to. It really worries me a little bit seeing how this team matches up against Chile. If Chile is able to get wide and play on the wings, there's certainly room to exploit against Peru. It really just depends on how deep Peru is willing to sit in this match. If they're going to try play for another 0-0 draw, then they might be a little bit more difficult to break down as we saw against Uruguay. But if there's any sort of will to push forward in the Clásico with the team they know very well, then we might see a more open flowing game. I'm really not too sure what changes we're going to see for Peru, if any. The loss of Farfan in midfield was really big. I think that showed to an extent that they were lacking some experience against Uruguay. I think that might show, but Gareca's really, I'm not sure he knows whether to put Cueva in sort of that midfield role where he's the creative link. That didn't really work against Uruguay, albeit going against 2 very good center backs in Godin and Jimenez. But if Peru is able to find any sort of creativity in the middle of the pitch and attack Chile there and sort of negate that wing style play, I think there's some will here for Peru to push forward and find some success. But again, you look at Chile and their disorganization. They showed up an hour late to the match. They got stuck in traffic because their coach, Rueda, decided to leave Sao Paulo on a Friday afternoon, an hour and a half after Colombia left the hotel. And then they get on the pitch and they run wild against Colombia, who really had no business being in that match, let alone taking it to penalties. So really, it depends what kind of lineup we see from Chile and Rueda here. It's another match where I just want to see late. Is he going to go with the 3-man back line and press Peru? We saw him do that against Uruguay. If he does something like that against Peru to get extra wide and sort of dominate midfield, then I think Chile can pretty well comfortably control this match. So really, it's dependent on the lineup, what happens. But this game is absolutely won and lost in midfield, where Peru looked really weak against Uruguay. Chile is very strong in that regard so far this tournament. It's a team I've been looking to oppose all tournament, and I haven't really found that spot yet. I don't think this is the one to do it against Peru, but I think it's another tightly contested match, and a lot's going to happen with the market late in that last hour once the lineups are confirmed. So if anyone's watching, do a little bit of digging online, see what you can, if there's any coach comments in the next 24 hours or so, see if Chile is going to go with an extra midfielder. If they do that, it sets up really well for them. If they sort of play this 4-3-3, Peru may find some success pushing forward.
All right, and of course, no extra time. Or sorry, extra time is in the semi-finals. There won't be any direct penalties. Mark O'Hare, I mean, I think Adam's kind of made a good enough case there for maybe a low-scoring one, a tight game. What are your thoughts here on this one? Because obviously, you kind of flagged Peru as an outside pick prior to the tournament, but I think even looking at the last night, pretty much lucky to be here, I would suggest.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, if this game was taking place before the tournament started, I'd be piling into Peru on the plus 0.5 Asian handicap. But yeah, I think I've had to have a rethink, re-rate these teams. I've marked Chile up quite significantly and Peru down slightly on my ratings. It's a very tricky tie to call this. There's a good rivalry between these two teams. There's been plenty of spicy affairs and World Cup qualifiers in recent years. But also these two teams, in the last 5-10 years have been playing some of the best attacking, successful football they've had in their in their histories, basically. Chile back-to-back Copa America success, Peru back at the World Cup too. So it's just a shame that this game's taking place in Porto Alegre on that terrible pitch, which is probably a push towards the unders. Neither side have scored in the last two games either, which is another nudge towards the unders as well. But I'm still hopeful that we might see a bit of a game here. Talk about Chile kind of being potentially underrated for me, at least coming into the tournament. Like Adam, I was been looking for ways to oppose them. I thought the game against Colombia was that opportunity, but full credit to Rueda, the head coach, who he's persisted with this aging squad, but he's adapted, he's tinkered to the team as well. He showed that against Uruguay with the system change, went back to 4-3-3 against Colombia, but definitely the better team. Adam mentioned about the traffic and the delayed kickoff. You just wonder how much of an effect that had on Colombia. It's very hard to say. I suggest probably not, because I think it was more down to selection-wise why they were pretty poor. But Chile was significantly better than them. If it wasn't for those VAR decisions, they would have won in 90 minutes. I think Rueda's been very crafty about what he's done to this team, added extra height to the defence, brought in Paul Gurr in midfield too. They don't operate so high up the pitch now. They're a bit more cautious. They're able to defend a bit deep, save energy in the legs out wide as well, where they're still really effective. But Arangui's in the midfield is such a wonderful player. He wasn't hit by injury after his move to Leverkusen. He'd be at one of the biggest clubs in Europe at the moment. But what really impressed me against Colombia was their defensive play, really. Limited to Colombia to just 0.25 XG. Arias, the goalkeeper, was barely involved at all. So really, really positive stuff there. But Peru, I expected them to get beaten by Uruguay. I thought the negativity from that Brazil game might spill over, but Galese, the goalkeeper, who was terrible against Brazil, saved the winning penalty against Uruguay. Nice bit of redemption for him. But they failed to score in 3 of their 4 games. Farfan out of the team. They left Guerrero up front on his own pretty much without support against Uruguay. I think they had sort of one attempt from inside the penalty area. Their XG was around 0.05 in that game. Showed no ambition at all. Really disappointed with their efforts, to be honest. I expect them to come out and play a little bit more. Uruguay missed 2 sitters, had 2 goals ruled out for VAR as well. So I think if you're looking at the tournament as a whole, and just a tournament, there's only one winner in this game. But something for me is just kind of erring me against backing Chile at odds-on prices. I have been keen to try and oppose them in this tournament. They haven't impressed me in patches, but I just feel there's something still stirring in this Peru team, and I just wonder whether the draw is probably the best play here. Like Adam, I want to see the team lineups, the team systems, the approach of the 2 managers before I make a real strong play this. But again, I just think as well, I know I've sort of twice mentioned now about the unders. The narrative is to get with the unders. I just look at that goal line, which is, now 1.3 quarters, you're getting near 1.75 on the overs. As soon as it gets that low, I'm always interested. I don't care who's playing, what the situation is.
Low.
That's always something to attack for me.
Yeah, it's literally an automatic play, Marcus. And I saw one a couple of weeks ago, Estonia, Northern Ireland, and it was like 1.5, 1.75. I don't like Mark. You know me. I haven't got major kind of like knowledge in this, but it's like, all right, just betting that. Don't care.
Just back it blind when it gets.
Yeah, just back it blind. It's exact same. Adam Chernoff in the NFL. When we get to mid-30s, low 30s with no weather, you're like, just back the over. Don't care who plays. So let's have a look at your best bets for the semi-finals, guys. So I'm not going to get involved this time because I got involved last week and I think I jinxed it, guys. That's the only reason Venezuela +1 didn't cover. Adam Chernoff, I'll come to you first, sir.
Yeah, for me, I think it's a fair disclaimer that nothing's been put in yet in the account, but it's certainly going to be Brazil or nothing. And then in the second match, the draw is very tempting, or Peru on a handicap.
The draw, and obviously with the exchange, Marco here, you can lay Chile. Like you said, you're uncomfortable backing them, odds on at the moment. And if you lay them at odds on currently, they're 1.96. You've always got Chile and Peru and the draw in play.
Yeah, sure. And I would consider it. I don't want to be that guy who swerves a game here, but for me it feels like one of those matches to swerve because I could make a stronger case for Chile winning this match. and Peru avoiding defeat. But that's why I was kind of erring in the middle, just for a bigger price on the draw itself. But yeah, if my best play of the weekend or the midweek, the semi-finals is definitely Brazil to win. I make them closer to about 1.7, 1.75. So anything bigger than that is a decent play for me.
Brazil all the way for both of the gentlemen. And Marco here, just so you know, it's okay to swerve a game. Okay. It is okay. It is okay. All right, guys, thanks for that. We'll be back Thursday afternoon previewing the final Copa America game, and really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to these games. I'm hoping that they're going to be good ones. Enjoy the Copa America semi-finals, and we'll chat to you on Thursday.